no problem.
Yeah.
All right. I'm ready.
Sweet.
Well, I'm on Matthew still. I gotta go to Exodus. All right. You want me to start since you started last time?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right, cool. Israel increases greatly in Egypt. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his household. Oh, crap. What have I done?
It's not that bad.
No, I know. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. All the descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. Joseph was already in Egypt. Then Joseph died, and all his brothers and all that generation. But the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. Pharaoh oppresses Israel. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, "Behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and if war breaks out, they join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land." Therefore they set taskmakers over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. So they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and brick and in all kinds of work in the field. In all their work, they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah, and the other Puah, Puah, when you serve as midwife to the what? Puah.
I love your inner child, James.
I mean, come on. It's funny. When you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, she shall live. But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this, and let the male children live?" The midwives said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them." So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, "Every son that is born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live."
Crazy, man. I can't believe that. He's just like, yep, kill the babies.
Kill the babies. Kill all the male. There's too many Israelis out here. We got to get rid of them.
Yep, too many Hebrews. They got to go.
Yep.
It's terrible.
They're having sex. They're giving birth. We got to get rid of them.
It's not funny, but you made it funny.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Make light out of that situation. What can I say?
Yeah. All right. Not much to cover there. It's pretty straightforward. I'm good to move on. You all right?
Yeah. I mean,
all right.
Straightforward. I agree.
The birth of Moses. Now a man from the house of Levi went and took his wife, a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes and daubed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the riverbank, and his sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young women walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and call a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the girl went and called the child's mother, and Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses because, she said, "I drew him out of the water." I just want to pause there for a moment. So Pharaoh said that all the babies should be cast into the Nile, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really awesome that God put it in Pharaoh's daughter's heart to take pity on Moses specifically.
This specific baby. Yep.
Right, because otherwise he would have just been thrown into the Nile, right? It's crazy the way God works. It's Pharaoh's own daughter that did this. That saved him.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, his own mother got to nurse him and was paid for it. "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." She got paid to take care of her own child. I think that's really cool. Moses flees to Midian. One day, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, behold, 2 Hebrews were struggling together. And he said to the man in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" He answered, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. When they came home to their father, Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come home so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and even drew water for us and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "Then where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him that he may eat bread." And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a sojourner in a foreign land." God hears Israel's groaning. During those many days, the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew. Something that I want to touch on here real quick, I think it's really interesting. Verse 24 here says, "And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob." I think it's really interesting that remembered is the word that's used here, because God being almighty, you wouldn't think that he would forget, right? Because having to remember something, you originally would have forgotten it, right? So, and maybe it's different in some other texts, like in Hebrew text.
Let's look at some different versions real quick. So we're in the ESV. Let me look at the New King James. Also remembered in that one. What about just the regular King James? God, remember just coming to, yep, it's the same thing.
Yeah, so I'd really, you know what I really want to do too is I really want to find like a Hebrew Bible where it's not like all Hebrew, but hopefully they have like certain words in there that are more descriptive, because not all the words are specifically translated. Like a lot of Hebrew words mean a lot more, or there's not a specific word like we have in English, and it just means something slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd really like to see if we can find like a Bible version where we can kind of dive a little bit deeper. I was looking through them the other day, and there is a lot of different versions.
I mean, at this point, we just got to learn the Greek and Hebrew, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree, but this is the best we can work with for right now.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll get to that point, but
Yeah.
just a thought that I've had, Oh. All right. Anything you want to cover?
Nope. I will say it is kind of moving quick. So let's quick recap. Moses was found floating down the river.
No, in the reeds by the river.
In the reeds, sorry, yes, in the reeds by the river. um, and then the princess found him, raised him as an Egyptian. So he was raised in royalty. He was pretty much a prince himself. And then, as an Egyptian, killed another Egyptian, which is like a no-no for a Hebrew or for an Israelite, and also a big no-no. Pharaoh sees this, puts out a hit list on him. He flees, goes and builds a family in another land.
Yep.
So, all right, the burning bush. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father. Oh, yeah, what's up?
Sorry, guys. Before y'all start this next one, I have to get going. Thanks for having me.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, sure.
Anytime, bro.
Yeah.
It was nice to hear. I can't wait until you guys post them.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, they'll be coming
All
soon.
Now,
yeah.
All right. Now take it
All
easy,
right.
guys.
See you.
Peace, dude. I'll talk to you later.
Bye. Bye.
All right. Yeah, this is the good layout. I like this.
I like this layout
It's the
too.
Bible like smack in the middle. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. The burning bush. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed them. Come, I will send to you Pharaoh. I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring the people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses said to God, If I come to the people of Israel and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, And they asked me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And God says to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel. The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you and what has been done to you in Egypt, and I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. And they will listen to your voice. And you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. And now please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders that I will do in it. After that, he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And when you go, you shall not go empty. But each woman shall ask of her neighbor and any woman who lives in her house for silver and gold jewelry and for clothing. You shall put them on your sons and on your daughters, so you shall plunder the Egyptians.
Wow.
So he's given Moses a pretty big promise right there.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. And it's hold on, let me text my dad. He called me. I just want to let him know I'll call him back.
Yeah. Can you envision yourself in that situation? Like, at this point, you're exiled from Egypt. You're pretty much on the hunt. Like, if you get found by the Egyptians, you're going to die, right? He's casted away. He ran away. And now he has like this psychedelic-esque experience. He sees a burning bush that isn't actually being consumed by the fire. So it's not burning, but the fire is all around it.
Right.
And this voice is talking to him that's saying, I'm the same God of the God of your ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm telling you to do. Go back to the place where you're banished, where if they find you, they're going to kill you. And you're going to tell them this, and you're going to bring all of my people out of it.
Right.
And Pharaoh is going to say no. And I know this, and you know this, but I'm going to change his mind. And he will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that would be a pretty crazy sight to see. I think it's interesting that Moses sees the burning bush, hears the voice of God, yet he's still like, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He's like, why are you coming to me for this? You know,
Good point.
it's really interesting because it kind of brings us back to Genesis where Jacob wrestled with God, right? God's telling him specifically to do this thing, yet he's still like, what? Why me? Like, could have got somebody else to do it, pretty much, like,
Yeah.
so
It's
I
even like
just,
us with this podcast. I was having like a little bit of like inadequacy in myself. And I talked about it with you today, even.
yeah.
And the sermon was like, don't listen to that. God's calling you. Like, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. We can't listen to those self-destructive voices in our head. We
Mhm.
have to listen to what God is telling us.
Well, and that's oftentimes harder too, because
Mm-hmm.
now we see what Moses does. We'll keep reading, but like
Right.
ultimately, we do know the story of Moses. He does go back to Egypt. But my goodness, man, like that must be a pretty freaking hard thing to do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, you're going up against a king. Like, that must be terrifying.
Yeah, a
Especially
king
like
that wants to
not
kill
only
you.
the thought. Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
no, because
He
Well,
died, I
well,
guess.
yeah, he died. We'll learn that in the next chapter.
Yeah.
But still, like God's telling you, you need to go up against this king and basically harass him for letting our people out of Israel, letting my people out of Israel
Yeah.
or out of Egypt. Sorry.
Yeah. And he's gonna say
So
no, but I'll change his heart. So you're just
right.
gonna have to trust me, bro.
Yeah.
God is the author of Trust Me, Bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Who is the
100%.
original? Yeah.
I also think it's really cool that God is like, not only is he going to let you guys out of Egypt, but you guys are going to plunder them too.
Yeah.
Like you're going to take their possessions. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Chapter 4. Moses given powerful signs. I love this chapter.
Oh yeah,
It's
because
so
you just
cool.
read through this recently, didn't you?
Yeah, I've been reading it over the last day or two. Then Moses answered, "But behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, 'The Lord did not appear to you.'" The Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" He said, "A staff." And he said, "Throw it on the ground." So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses ran from it. But the Lord said to Moses, "Put out your hand and catch it by the tail." So he put out his hand and caught it, and it became a staff in his hand, that they may believe that the Lord, that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Again, the Lord said to him, "Put your hand inside your cloak." And he put his hand inside his cloak. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous like snow. Then God said, "Put your hand back inside your cloak." So he put his hand back inside his cloak. And when he took it out, behold, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. "If they will not believe you," God said, "or listen to the first sign, they may believe the latter sign. If they will not believe even these two signs or listen to your voice, you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground, and the water that you shall take from the Nile will become blood on the dry ground." But Moses said to the Lord, "Oh, my Lord, I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue." Then the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be your mouth and teach you what you shall speak." But he said, "Oh, my Lord, please send someone else." Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, "Is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do. He shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. And take in your hand the staff with which you shall do the signs. I think that stuff's really cool, especially the staff turning into a serpent.
Yeah.
Like, imagine seeing that and be like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
holy crap."
He goes, "Man, how are these people going to believe me?" And then God's like, "Because I can do anything."
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
because
want me
I'm
to prove it to
God.
you?
Yeah,
Well, why don't you throw your staff on the ground there, bud?
yeah.
Snake.
Oh, put your hand in your cloak. That would be crazy. Just, "Oh, my hand's white,
Yeah.
white as snow." Oh, that would freak me out. I was gonna say Moses was relatively calm in these situations. Well, I guess he did say that he ran from the snake. He was scared of it.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, I guess just the text doesn't do the actual event justice,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
It's a
know?
pretty straightforward writing of like what happened. So you can only imagine what's going on in his head at that point. It's like when he
Right.
pulled his hand out of his pocket and saw that he had leprosy on his hand, he's probably like, what did you just do to me?
Yeah.
He was probably terrified. I think I
Or
was like, no,
yeah,
no, 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 put your hand back in your pocket. He's like, okay, okay.
yeah. I mean, imagine God actually like talking to you. Like, I mean, it sounds like this was like not, it wasn't in his mind. Like he was hearing this. So, or hearing God's voice from the burning bush, right? So,
Well,
it
at this
talks
point,
about in,
I don't think this is at the burning bush anymore. I think we moved on from this. Is this still at the burning bush? When this
that's
is
kind
happening?
of what I was picturing. Like God's having this conversation with him at the burning bush. Like I was picturing God's voice coming from the bush. That's
Mm.
kind of why it was set up in the beginning. But I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but
Moses giving
that's
powerful sign, the burning bush. And then the next one is Moses giving powerful signs. Yeah, I guess it could be still happening here. I always thought about it as like a different setting for some reason.
hmm.
I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, but
Yeah,
either way, God is talking to him.
yeah. Well, there was this like children's show. It's like stories about the Bible for children. And this was one of the episodes that I watched. And like this whole conversation happens at the burning bush. So
Mm.
I was kind of like, that's what I was picturing, probably because I saw that. But
Well, I mean, it doesn't really say that he went anywhere else, I don't think, at this point. So,
right. Yeah, and he told him to take off his sandals because he's on holy ground, right? So
yeah.
where else would God speak to him other than in a holy place, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Moses returns to Egypt. Moses went back to Jethro, his father in law, and said to him, please let me go back to my brothers in Egypt to see whether they are still alive. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. And the Lord said to Moses in Midian, go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead. So Moses took his wife and his sons and had them ride on a donkey and went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the staff of God in his hand. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles that I have put in your power. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. And I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Then Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it and said, that'd be so weird,
Yeah.
and said, surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me. So he let him alone. It was then that she said, a bridegroom of blood, because of the circumcision. The Lord said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he went and met him at the mountain of God and kissed him. And Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord with which he had sent him to speak, and all the signs that he had commanded him to do. Then Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the people of Israel. Aaron spoke all the words that the Lord had spoken to Moses and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel and that he had seen their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshiped. I just want to recap something because when I read this earlier, I was a little confused about a specific part. Um, I think it was right before him returning. Uh, wait. Okay, no, it's down here. So then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord Israel, my firstborn son, and I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. So in this instance, this is what Moses is supposed to say to Pharaoh? Is that not right?
Correct. Yeah. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord.
Thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son, and I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. If
So
you
in
refuse
this
to let him
instance,
go, I will
he's
kill your
saying,
firstborn son. Okay.
my son, in this case, his son is Israel. And remember, Israel
Right.
is Jacob, but at this point, Israel is now representing a nation. Oop.
Right.
It always happens. Yeah, so at this point, Israel is a nation. So God is referring to the people of Israel as his son.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
And
makes
then,
sense.
yeah.
But
So let my
this
son
is the
go that.
part that confuses me here
Mhm.
is at a lodging place on the way, the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Then Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin. So Zipporah is Moses' wife, right? And they're talking about their son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it. So why did the Lord seek to put him to death? Because he stopped at a lodging place?
I don't know.
Right? Like, I don't know. It's just a
Yeah.
little
I
confusing
actually
to
wanted to
me.
revisit this part too because I'm not too sure as well. Um, then support took a flint. Oh, can cut her. Hold on. Let me read through some of this too. The events narrated in these verses are significant not only for what they tell us, for what they tell, but also for what they show. Not only has the Lord remembered his covenant promises, but his people are also called to remember the conditions of the covenant. Moses is held responsible for the provisions of the covenant with Abraham that required him to circumcise his sons. Failure to be circumcised may lead to being cut off, some form of severe punishment from God. And then reference Genesis 17:14, Exodus 12:15, Leviticus 7:11 through 36, Numbers 9:6 through 14. Moses' failure to circumcise his son could have led to his death had it not been for his wife's action. Once again, Moses' life is preserved through the actions of another, this time through his wife, Zipporah. Fascinating.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
at this point, yeah, because the old law is still in effect at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So it's really interesting that, like, it's just so sudden. Like, God is like, I want you to do this great thing for me. And then all of a sudden, God's like, I'm going to kill you.
yeah,
Like, and it's because of because of the fact that he didn't circumcise his son. Like,
right. Well,
I
so
don't
I
know.
guess because we are studying the Old Testament right now, right? So at
Right.
this point, Jesus' forgiveness and blood has not been washed over humanity.
Right.
So
Exactly.
they're under the law, which again was a placeholder. And through the law, God is trying to set up the lineage to the coming of Jesus at this point too.
Hmm.
So at this point, being under the law, it still needs to be adhered to, or else God will not bless them. So because Moses is not following God's covenant in this time, God's like, all right, I can find someone else.
Yeah.
And then, but again, because God ordained it, he put it in the heart of Zipporah to do what was right at the time.
Yeah.
So in this Old Testament time, this was necessary to follow the law. Because again, it's a
Yeah.
placeholder.
Yeah. And maybe that's why, because up here, well, I don't know. Israel is my firstborn son, and I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. So, like, I almost thought that was a reference to Moses' son because of what happens in the events right after this.
No, so that
But
verse
he's
is
still telling that's still what he's supposed to say to Pharaoh.
correct. Yeah. And that we'll get to that point too in Exodus because something
Okay.
happened. I
Yeah,
won't
because as I was
spoil it.
reading through, like, I'm a couple chapters further than this, And I
Mhm.
never saw Moses do that, but maybe I still need to read a little further. So,
Right.
or in my, not Moses do that, but I didn't see Moses say that to Pharaoh. But maybe it's a little bit down the line.
It gets there.
Yeah.
It gets there.
So, all right. Well,
That is fascinating that Moses wasn't following the law. So,
it just goes back to show that we're all sinners,
mhm,
right? I mean, we're none of us are perfect in the eyes of God.
right.
We do not hold his standard even close.
Exactly.
So
And in this
even
case, he didn't even realize his faults too. He was saved by Sephora.
right, right. Yeah, so even prophets and, big figures in the Old Testament are still doing what's wrong,
Oh yeah, dude. I mean,
but
Moses is a
God still
murderer.
uses them as instruments.
Yeah, Moses is a murderer. Like, it literally starts off with him killing
Yeah, that
somebody.
yeah, that's true,
And
yeah.
he looked around and didn't see anyone and killed the guy.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, yeah. So again, the only person who was ever perfect in this world was Jesus. He came to
Yeah,
fulfill the law. And at this point, the law isn't it's a placeholder waiting to be fulfilled.
yeah. That was another thing that was talked about in our service as well today is, like, you shouldn't see your sins as any less bad as anybody else's sins. Um, I don't remember exactly which figure was referenced, but someone does say, like, I have done terrible things, yet the Lord has blessed me or something like that. But I don't remember exactly, but it was a really good message and it relates to this. So
Mhm.
I really need to start writing down this scripture.
Yeah. Well, something that's kind of interesting too that we do see in this Old Testament law. A lot of people today say if God is all good, why doesn't he punish the bad? And it's because now, because of Jesus dying on the cross for us, we're not held to the standard of that we have to be perfect. In the Old Testament,
Right.
we were, and he did.
Yep. Yep.
And then they go, well, the God of the Old Testament was evil because he was killing everybody.
Yeah, no. No,
So,
it's because there's evil within people's hearts.
right. So it's this catch 22, you know? So it's like, well, God doesn't do justice to evil right now. And it's like, well, okay, you look back at the Old Testament, he did. Oh, well, no, the God of the Old Testament was ruthful, or was
Yeah.
ruthless and
Yeah.
wrathful.
Right.
So you can't
Ruthful.
can't ruthful, new word, but you can't win in this situation, right?
Right. Right.
So, but again, the law is not to be used as something to clean you, right?
Right.
It's used as a mirror to reflect that you are not perfect,
Exactly.
and you don't clean yourself with a mirror.
Yep.
Yeah, I got that
That's
from
very
Wes
true.
Huff. That was a
Yeah, I
really
really
good quote.
like that. That's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
That's really cool, man. Yeah, I never like thought about it in that light,
yeah. That was a mic
you
drop
know.
moment when Wes Huff said that. It was pretty good. I was like, I gotta remember that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Dang, that's awesome.
But it's true. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's a guideline for how we should be. Are we ever gonna be able to be that way? No, because we're not perfect.
Hmm.
But Jesus cleaned of us of that imperfectness.
Exactly.
Well, to a degree. We're still imperfect, but
Right.
all right. Chapter 5.
Chapter 5. Making bricks without straw. Afterwards, Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness. But Pharaoh said, who is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I don't know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go. Then they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please, let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword. But the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people away from their work? Get back to your burdens. And Pharaoh said, Behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest from their burdens? The same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen, You shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks as in the past. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But the number of bricks that they made in the past you shall impose on them. You shall by no means reduce it, for they are idle. Therefore they cry, Let us go and offer sacrifice to our God. Let heavier work be laid on the men so that they may labor at it and pay no regard to lying words. So the taskmaster and the foreman of the people went out and said to the people, Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go and get the straw yourselves, wherever you can find it. But your work will not be reduced in the least. So the people were scattered throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The taskmasters were urgent, saying, Complete your work, your daily task, each day, as when there was straw. And the foremen of the people of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmaster had set over them, were beaten, and they were asked, Why have you not done all the task of making bricks today and yesterday as in the past? Then the foremen of the people of Israel came and cried to Pharaoh, Why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, Make bricks, and behold, your servants are beaten. But the fault is in your own people. But he said, You are idle. You are idle. That is why you say, Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Go now and work. No straw will be given to you, but you must still deliver the same number of bricks. The foremen of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, You shall by no means reduce your number of bricks, your daily task each day. They met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them as they came out from Pharaoh, and they said to them, The Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. Then Moses turned to the Lord and said, O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all. Guilty as charged. I do that all the time to God.
What do you
Moses.
mean? Oh,
What Moses just did right there. Yeah.
say
So
why? Okay.
like at this point, God gives Moses a command. Moses listens, which is something that is hard to do in the first place, right? But Moses listens. He goes to Pharaoh and says what he wants to say. In this moment, God has not showed up yet. God hasn't done what he had told Moses he was going to do yet. And what happens is Moses is listening to God. He's gone and done what is asked of him. And what happens? Pharaoh returns it with more evil. So now he makes the conditions harder. He's literally saying, Go build all this structure, but I'm not going to give you the materials to build it anymore. You have to go get the materials. But I still expect the same amount of work to be done, even though I'm not going to give you what you need. And then he starts punishing everybody. And so at this point, Moses is like, Well, what the heck, God? Because you told me to do this, and you said that you would all do all this mighty stuff, and I did it, and you haven't done all this mighty stuff yet. And all the people are mad at me. The people that you're trying to save are all pissed at me. And now, God, you're not doing it. So I'm kind of pissed at you.
Yeah.
But God hasn't showed up yet.
Yeah. I think it's also a message of tribulation because, while we have faith in God, a lot of the times he puts us through tests, right? Tests of our faith. So I think it's like, okay, I'm going to make, their lives are going to get harder, but it's to test their faith because they're about to get salvation from their slavery,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think it's really interesting that it kind of sends that message too, to people nowadays, like, hey, yeah, you're going to have bad stuff happen. You're going to have bad times in your life, but if you continue your faith and grow it stronger, then God ultimately will save you.
Yeah. Yeah. And at this point too, like God did talk to Moses and he gave Moses a promise. And this promise and this time where we're reading right now, verse 22, has not been delivered upon yet. So I'll recap 23. For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to all this to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all. When God was talking to Moses at the burning bush, he didn't tell him Pharaoh was going to make it worse on his people. But God
Right.
did give him a promise of what he was going to bring him out of.
Yep.
And that's
Yeah.
what we need to keep sight on is God's promise, because we don't know how God's going to get us there. And sometimes things get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, and God did tell Moses, like, hey, he's gonna say no. Like,
Yep.
I'm gonna harden his heart and he's gonna tell you no many times.
Yep.
So yeah, Moses is expecting his, you know, what would you call this? A test or like a not a test,
Turbulence.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Moses is trying to get away with getting over this easily. And
Yeah.
God's like, I didn't say it would be easy, man.
Yeah. He's like, I told you he would say no, but I
Yeah,
didn't tell him that he was going to make things way harder on his people and that the
right.
people would be mad at Moses.
Right. And you got to think too that it's not really God's fault. It's the hardness of Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh
Yeah.
chose to make it harder on the Hebrews, on the
Yep.
Israelites. You know what I mean? Like God gave us free will, right? So he's not saying, hey, Pharaoh, make it harder on them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I think Moses just turned that and blamed God
He did.
because of what Pharaoh did. And it's not necessarily God's fault.
No, it's not God's fault at all. I mean, we
Yeah.
all have free will.
Right.
This is Pharaoh.
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't believe in their God. He's
Mhm.
far from it.
He literally says, I don't know your God.
Yeah. Exactly.
No.
So interesting.
Yeah. But I'm guilty as charged. I do what Moses does for sure.
Yeah. 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 Especially when like something happens in your own life. You're like, why?
Yeah. God, I thought you told
Oh,
me to do this. Now
now I'm
things
suffering.
suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a few months later, you're like, oh yeah, that's why.
It's like that meme.
Yeah.
Why? 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 Oh, that's why.
Yeah. All right. Chapter 6. God promises deliverance. But the Lord said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of his land. God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty. But by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as sojourners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians hold as slaves, and I have remembered my covenant. Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them. And I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God. And you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land that I swore to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you for a possession. I am the Lord. Moses spoke thus to the people of Israel, but they did not listen to Moses because of their broken spirit and harsh slavery. So the Lord said to Moses, Go in, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel go out of his land. But Moses said to the Lord, Behold, the people of Israel have not listened to me. How then shall Pharaoh listen to me? For I am of uncircumcised lips. But the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and gave them a charge about the people of Israel and about Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt. The genealogy of Moses and Aaron. These are the heads of their fathers' houses, the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel: Hanak, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. These are the clans of Reuben. The sons of Simeon: Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jakin, Zoar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. These are the clans of Simeon. These are the names of the sons of Levi according to their generations: Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, the years of the life of Levi being 137 years. The sons of Gershon: Libni and Shimei by their clans. The sons of Kohath: Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uziel, the years of the life of Kohath being 133 years. The sons of Merari: Mali and Mushi. These are the clans of the Levites according to their generations. Amram took as his wife Jochebed, his father's sister, and she bore him Aaron and Moses, the years of the life of Amram being 137 years. The sons of Izhar: Korah, Nepheg, and Zikri. The sons of Uziel: Mishael, Elzaphan, and Sithri. Aaron took as his wife Elisheba, the daughter of Aminadab and the sister of Nahshon, and she bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. The sons of Korah: Asir, Elkanah, and Abiasaph. These are the clans of the Korahites. Eleazar, Aaron's son, took as his wife one of the daughters of Putiel, and she bore him Phinehas. These are the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites by their clans. The Levites?
Levites, yeah.
Yeah.
You're killing those names, by the way.
Thank you. I'm really trying. I think it helps that I read it earlier too.
Yeah.
These are the Aaron and Moses to whom the Lord said, Bring out the people of Israel from the land of Egypt by their hosts. It was they who spoke to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, about bringing out the people of Israel from Egypt. This Moses and this Aaron. On the day when the Lord spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, the Lord said to Moses, I am the Lord. Tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I say to you. But Moses said to the Lord, Behold, I am of uncircumcised lips. How will Pharaoh listen to me?
I want to go back before the lineage starts because there was something I wanted to say. Yeah, so I'll recap it. So the Lord said to Moses,
What verse
Go
was it?
10. I'm going to start from there.
Okay.
So the Lord said to Moses, Go in and tell the king of Egypt to let the people of Israel go out of his land. But Moses said to the Lord, Behold, the people of Israel have not listened to me. How shall Pharaoh listen to me? For I am of uncircumcised lips. But the Lord spoke to Moses, and Aaron gave them a charge about the people of Israel and about Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the people out of Israel and the land of Egypt. So Moses is clearly having a lot of doubts right now.
Yeah. There's a lot of, but Moses said to the Lord.
Yep.
There's a lot of buts.
Yep. Moses spoke to us, the people of Israel, but they did not listen to Moses because of their broken spirit and harsh slavery. So he's really going through it. He's hearing God clearly, and he's listening to God. But every time he talks to God, he's like, God, what the heck, man?
Yeah,
You
you told me
haven't,
to say this and they're still not listening.
you haven't delivered to me. The people hate me. I can't speak very well. Like, I'm unholy. I'm uncleansed. So he's got doubt about himself. He's got doubt about what he's being told. Like, there's a lot of doubt going on in him right now, yet he's
Yeah.
still doing it.
Yeah,
I think that's important
that is important. You're right.
because he's doubting like crazy. And God is still telling him to do it, and he's still doing it. And he's listening. So he's
Right.
listening through the doubt.
Yep. Trust in God, man.
He's trusting in God, but he's doubting God
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, a lot. You're
Yeah.
right.
And what does God say to him too when he responds? He's not like focusing on the bad. God reaffirms his promise to him
Right.
multiple times over. He's like, no, this is what I'm going to do for you. So he's not focusing on what Pharaoh's doing. God is focusing on his promise that he gave to him.
Yep.
And what does he keep reassuring him with? I've remembered my promise that I gave to your ancestors.
Yep. And I will
Haven't forgotten.
deliver my
Yep.
children out of Egypt.
Mm-hmm. And he keeps
Exactly.
reaffirming his promise. So
Yep.
God has a promise here. He's made it. Moses is trying to listen to him. He's doubting him like crazy. And every time Moses is doubting him and goes to him and is like complaining, God's like, I gave you a promise, dude. You got to listen.
Yep. It is very important to remember.
Yeah.
And I like that even though he has doubt and he's questioning God, like, why are these things happening? Moses still doesn't have fear to not do these things that God asked him to do,
Yeah. That's a really good point.
you know, because like we've talked about it in the past, like I think in our last study, that doubt is not the opposite of faith, fear is. So if Moses in this situation let fear control him, you know, fear that Pharaoh may kill him or something like that, then this stuff wouldn't have happened, right?
Yep. He probably is feeling a lot of fear too, though. He's just not listening to it.
Right. Yeah, he's not letting it control him.
Right.
And that's, I think, a very good distinction that you made is we're all going to feel fear, but we can't let it control us.
Right. And he's clearly not letting it control him
Yeah.
because he's doing what God is telling him. And you can tell he's consumed with doubt. And I'm sure there's
Oh, yeah.
fear in that as well.
Right. Exactly.
Because with doubt comes fear, you know?
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Some level of fear, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's some really good points.
Well. All right, keep going.
Chapter 7. Oh, yeah, you're reading this one, right?
Yeah, chapter 7.
Mhm.
Moses and Aaron before Pharaoh. Should do a country read through one of these days. It'd be funny.
Yeah.
And the Lord said to Moses, Yeah. And the Lord said to Moses, see, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go out of his land. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart. And though I will multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring my host, my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great acts of judgment. The Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the people of Israel from among them. Moses and Aaron did so. They did just as the Lord commanded them. Now Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, Prove yourselves by working a miracle. Then you shall say to Aaron, take your staff and cast it down before Pharaoh, that it may become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron cast down his staff before Pharaoh and his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh summoned the wise men and sorcerers, and they, the magicians of Egypt, also did the same by their secret arts. Each man cast a staff down his staff, and they became serpents. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Still Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Pretty wild times, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, being Pharaoh in that moment, if you saw that Moses' staff just ate all your magician staffs, would you not think like, oh, that guy's way more powerful than we are?
Yeah.
Or his God's way more powerful than ours. So maybe I should listen to him.
Also, the fact that he called up the magicians and the sorcerers, and they could also turn their staffs into snakes.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that. That must be some kind of like demonic forces at hand there. Like the devil, because like while the devil doesn't have the power of God, he still has some power on
Mhm.
earth, right? That's more divine than human, nature or whatever. But I don't know, it's just interesting. And it also goes to show that throughout the Bible it does mention other gods. It never denies other gods, saying that they don't exist.
Says they're not powerful.
It just says, yeah, they're not powerful, especially as powerful
Yeah.
as the Almighty
Says he can
God.
that God can blow him away with a wisp of his breath. Something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So they're still doing these crazy things like making their staffs turn into serpents.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. So also check this out. It says the wise men and the sorcerers, and they the magicians of Egypt. So there was probably definitely some of what you're talking about with the people who actually were doing these things actually did turn that serpent into a snake. Wouldn't surprise me if there was also an actual just like magician there, like we have today. Just a
Hmm.
really good showman and was like, oh, I can do that. I can make that trick happen. Even though they didn't. It's like deceit,
Yeah.
because like that's all modern day magic is. It's deceit,
Yes.
right?
Right.
But I mean,
I
it's
don't
cool,
know. There's
cool to
some
watch.
magicians out there where I'm just like, dude, do they really have some kind of like
David Blaine.
power? Yeah. Like,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I know.
Did they like sign their soul to the devil or something to get these powers? Like, I don't know. They're real magicians do some crazy things too, where
They
it's
do.
like,
They do.
how?
So it's
A
probably a
lot of
good
like
mix of both.
that's true. Yeah. Deceitfulness and like actual power that
Mhm.
they've been given. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, I'll keep going. The first plague, water turned to blood. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning, as he is going out to the water. Stand on the bank of the Nile to meet him, and take in your hand the staff that turned into a serpent. And you shall say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But so far you have not obeyed. Thus says the Lord, by this you shall know that I am the Lord. Behold, with the staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water that is in the Nile, and it shall turn into blood. The fish in the Nile shall die, and the Nile will stink, and the Egyptians will grow weary of drinking water from the Nile. And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their rivers, their canals, and their ponds, and all their pools of water, so that they may become blood. And there shall be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, even in the vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded in the sight of the Pharaoh, and in the sights of his servants. He lifted up the staff and struck the water in the Nile, and all the water in the Nile turned into blood. And the fish in the Nile died, and the Nile stank, so that the Egyptians could not drink water from the Nile. There was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. But the magicians of Egypt did the same by their secret arts. So Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, and he would not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Pharaoh turned and went into his house, and he did not take even this to heart. And the Egyptians dug along the Nile for water to drink, for they could not drink the water of the Nile. 7 full days passed after the Lord had struck the Nile.
Do you think like when he smacked the Nile with his staff that like it just all instantaneously turned red? Or do you think like at the point of where the staff hit, it just kind of grew from there and just stretched out over the Nile?
I have no clue, dude.
That's kind of
I've
what I
always,
imagine is
I
the
always,
latter,
yeah, I kind of imagine the first one, but the latter is probably more so what happened.
right? Because it's God's staff.
Spreading it. Yeah.
I'm striking the water. I don't know. And wasn't there some kind of like I thought I saw something about like some scientists actually discovered that at one point the Nile was red like blood. And it was because of like an excess amount of sulfur being in the water at that time or something like that.
Mm.
I don't know. I thought I read something about that a while back. I mean, this was a while ago, but
It is fascinating. I mean, in this context, do I think the water turned into actual blood? I don't know. Could
or
that be
was
like
it
a
like
metaphor of like,
red like blood?
yeah, well, like there's also this an algae bloom called red tide that can turn everything in the water red. It can turn the water a red color.
Mm,
I don't know. You know,
yeah.
I get that's I just don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Either
don't
way,
either.
I wouldn't be surprised if either one were true.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not going to put my stakes of my faith on that. You know,
Oh
because if
yeah,
they ever
no.
prove it, no, it wasn't blood. It was red algae. Like, okay,
Okay, yeah, it still looks like blood.
yeah, like
Like,
the waters look like blood, and no one could drink from it. I think that's the point here. Killed
yeah.
all the fish. Like,
Yeah, and either way, like either the sulfur or the would you say it was like algae or something? Like a red
it's called
algae?
red tide. Yeah, it's
Red tide?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
algae.
So I feel like either way that would stink too because they made it pretty clear that it stank, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
like either like sulfur stinks, but also like the algae could stink,
And
kind of like a
all the
dead
dead
fishy
fish,
smell or something. Yeah, yeah, that too.
all the
Yeah.
dead fish smell bad too.
Yeah.
When we had those big
Oh,
fish
that
kill
makes sense.
offs back in the island, that was a lot of that was caused by red tide.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
and the water was turned like a reddish orange color in the brackish water.
Ooh,
Yeah, and there was just dead fish everywhere.
wow.
Yeah, and you clearly can't drink any of that water out of the
No.
river. So,
Yeah.
but it is fascinating too, though. Again, he called up the magicians, and
Yeah, and
they,
they still managed to turn water into blood, essentially.
mhm, yeah, the quote unquote blood.
Yeah, yeah,
And he's
exactly.
like, "Oh, my magicians can do it too. Nothing special here."
Yeah. Yeah, right.
I
So
wonder though at like the amount because if all the water was already red, at least in the rivers and everything like that, then what were they doing? Like just turning like a few cups of water into blood?
right, yeah,
So like
exactly.
nowhere like they couldn't do it nearly on the scale that it was already done.
Right, because it was already done.
Right.
Exactly.
So they would have water like stored. So they would have to be using it from that stored water.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
And they wouldn't want to spoil everything because all the water is turned into blood at this point. So they probably only did a small amount.
Yeah. And still Pharaoh's like, "Nah, they can do it. Your
Yep.
God ain't nothing."
Yep.
Golly, he's silly goose.
Yeah.
All right, the second plague, frogs.
They're turning the frogs gay, Joe.
That water, it turned him.
It was the water in the second plague. That's what got them. They turned them all gay.
Oh. Then the Lord said to Moses, go into Pharaoh and say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will plague all your country with frogs. The Nile shall swarm with frogs that shall come up into your houses and into your bedroom and on your bed and into the houses of your servants and your people and into your ovens and your kneading bowls. God, that would be awful. Oh my gosh. In your bed and ovens and oh,
There's frogs everywhere.
yeah, dude. The frog shall come up on you and on your people and on all your servants. And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the rivers, over the canals, and over the pools, and make frogs come up on the land of Egypt. So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But the magicians did the same by their secret arts and made frogs come up on the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron and said, plead with the Lord to take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. Moses said to Pharaoh, be pleased to command me when I am to plead for you and for your servants and for your people, that the frogs be cut off from you and your houses and be left only in the Nile. And he said, tomorrow. Moses said, be it as you say, so that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. The frogs shall go away from you and your houses and your servants and your people. They shall be left only in the Nile. So Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried to the Lord about the frogs, as he had agreed with Pharaoh. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses. The frogs died out in the houses, the courtyards, and the fields,
Oof.
and they gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was a respite, he hardened his heart and would not listen to them, as the Lord had said.
What a freaking turd, man.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, that is like literally, he was like, Moses, please tell your God to make these frogs go away. And
Yeah.
he made them go away. And then he was like, nah, I'm not going to listen to him anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a jerk.
Dude, can you imagine that? Just a bunch of piled up dead frogs
Oh,
rotting all over the place.
dude. Taking them all out of your houses. And
Uh,
yeah, oh my God, that would be terrible.
After already like smelling dead fish for a week straight.
Right? Yeah, now you're dealing with these dead frogs. Oh, yeah, it'd be awful.
You know, if you think about it too, logically, it would make sense that all the frogs would start going up onto the land because they live by the water and they hatch in the water. So if there was like this uh, thing that would drive everything out of the water, like blood or algae or whatever, they would be wanting to get away from that.
Yeah.
So the
But it
fish
all,
all
but
die
it,
off, and then all the frogs run away and go out into the land.
right. But he does say in the beginning of the second plague, let me see. Stretch out your hand with your staff over the rivers, over the canals, and over the pools. So they were also coming out of other sources of water other than just the Nile, because the Nile was just turned to blood, it says in that first plague. So they're also coming out of these other water sources that may not be contaminated with, the blood.
That's true. That's true.
But it's still really interesting that makes sense though.
Hmm.
The third plague, gnats. Honestly, I don't know if this is any better than frogs.
Dude,
It's a,
if there are gnats that we have a gnat problem at my work, and
oh
they are
yeah,
just awful, man. They're so annoying.
yeah, dude. so tiny and gather in groups and
Oh,
fly around in your face.
and they'll fly up your nose and in your mouth when you're
Oh
talking. It's
God, yeah.
awful, dude. Yeah.
Fly in your ear and you're like, ah!
Yeah.
Oh. Then the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth, so that it may become gnats in all of the land of Egypt. And they did so. Aaron stretched out his hand with his staff and struck the dust of the earth, and there were gnats on man and beast. All the dust of the earth became gnats in all the land of Egypt. The magicians tried by their secret arts to produce gnats, but they could not.
Dun dun dun.
So there were gnats on man and beast. Then the magicians said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Come on, man. You should be getting the picture now. Pharaoh, you're being stupid. The fourth plague, flies.
Golly.
Oh, just as bad as gnats.
I'm glad I didn't live in Egypt during this time, dude.
Yeah, for real. And it would make sense with all those piles of dead fish and dead frogs and stuff that
Yeah.
flies would be, oh.
And let's take a moment to think about this too. Because we're like, before we started talking about all the plagues, when Moses came in, like the Egyptians clearly didn't like him, right? Because they're trying to take away all their laborers.
Right.
And then the Israelites are all like, dude, we don't like you either. You're making our life harder. And now he brings on plagues
Yep.
to make everybody's life miserable.
Right.
Like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
You know?
And that's one thing that I was wondering too. Like, is this stuff happening to the Hebrews as well?
I don't know. It doesn't really
Because,
mention
like,
it, but it's the whole land of Egypt that this is happening to.
right, right. But it also says, like, specifically, like, it, like, he's telling Pharaoh, it will be your people and your servants, right?
That is true. Yeah.
Like, yeah, what's coming up right now? I will send swarms of flies on you and your servants and your people and into your houses.
True.
So I'm wondering if this stuff is like not happening to the Hebrews, at least
Yeah,
not
yeah.
as severely, right?
Maybe it'll clarify it if we keep reading.
Yeah. Then the Lord said to Moses, rise up early in the morning and present yourself to Pharaoh as he goes out to the water, and say to him, thus says the Lord, let my people go that they may serve me. Or else, if you will not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies on you and your servants and your people and into your houses. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be filled with swarms of flies, and also the ground on which they stand. But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people dwell, so that no swarms of flies shall be there.
There it is.
That, yep, that you may know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. Thus I will put a division between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign shall happen. And the Lord did so. There came great swarms of flies into the house of Pharaoh and into his servants' houses throughout all the land of Egypt. The land was ruined by the swarms of flies.
Mm.
Then Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron and said, go, sacrifice to your God within the land. But Moses said, it would not be right to do so, for the offerings we shall sacrifice to the Lord our God are an abomination to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice offerings abominable to the Egyptians before their eyes, will they not stone us? We must go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God, as he tells us. So Pharaoh said, I will not, or I will let you go to sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only you must not go very far away.
Hey, hey.
Plead for me. Then Moses said, behold, I am going out from you, and I will plead with the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people tomorrow. Only let not Pharaoh cheat again by not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. So Moses went out from Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord did as Moses asked, and removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh and his servants, and from his people. Not one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also, and did not let the people go. He's a liar.
Bruh.
You really aren't getting the message, dude? Like, you're being told these things are going to happen. They happen. You say, Moses, please get rid of these flies and gnats. And then they go away. And then you still say, no, don't let them go.
Yeah. After saying,
Like,
hey, man,
ridiculous.
if you get rid of these flies, because I'm really annoyed with them, I'll let you go out into the wilderness. But just don't go very far. It's like,
Right.
Moses is like, I got you, dude. Comes back. Pharaoh's like, no.
Yeah. What?
I know I said this, but
Man.
guy's a doo-doo head.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So do you think that it was just the flies that they were separated from, or do you think it was all the plagues?
It sounds like it was just the flies based on what
Yeah,
we just read,
it does. Because
right?
that it only said that his people were separated when it got to the flies.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everyone's affected by the Nile turning to blood, right?
Right.
Can't really
Exactly.
get around that one.
Yeah. So, yeah, it does sound like it was just the flies in this situation. So, I guess that answered our question.
Yeah. Eesh.
Yeah.
The fifth plague. Egyptian livestock die.
Ooh.
Then the Lord said to Moses, go in to Pharaoh and say to him, thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, let my people go, that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let them go and still hold them, behold, the hand of the Lord will fall with a very severe plague upon your livestock that are in the field, the horses, the donkeys, the camels, the herds, and the flocks. But the Lord will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt, so that nothing of all that belongs to the people of Israel shall die. And the Lord set a time, saying, tomorrow the Lord will do this thing in the land. And the next day the Lord did this thing. All the livestock of the Egyptians died, but not one of the livestock of the people of Israel died. And Pharaoh sent, and behold, not one of the livestock of Israel was dead. But the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. The sixth plague, boils. Oh.
Oh, God.
And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, take handfuls of soot from the kiln, and let Moses throw them in the air in the sight of the Pharaoh. It shall become fine dust over all the land of Egypt, and become boils, breaking out in sores on man and beast throughout all the land of Egypt. So they took the soot from the kiln and stood before Pharaoh. And Moses threw it in the air, and it became boils, breaking out in sores on man and beast. And the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boils came upon the magicians and upon all the Egyptians. But the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not listen to them, as the Lord had spoken to Moses. Ugh.
That would be awful.
Ugh. They're drinking that nasty water, hanging out with dead frogs,
Yep. They got flies and gnats in their houses.
flies and gnats just everywhere, eating up all the dead fish and frogs.
Now all their livestock just died.
Their livestock's dead, and now they all have boils and sores.
Oh, God.
Ugh. The seventh plague, hail. Then the Lord said to Moses, rise up early in the morning and present yourself before Pharaoh and say to him, thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, let my people go, that they may serve me. For this time I will send all my plagues on you yourself and on your servants and your people, so that you may know that there is none like me in all the earth. For by now I could have put out my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, and you would have been cut off from the earth. But for this purpose I have raised you up, to show you my power, so that my name shall be proclaimed in all the earth. You are still exalting yourself against my people, and will not let them go. Behold, about this time tomorrow I will cause very heavy hail to fall. Such has never been seen in Egypt from the day it was founded until now. Now therefore send, get your livestock and all that you have in the field into safe shelter, for every man and beast that is in the field and is not brought home will die when the hail falls on them. Then whoever feared the word of the Lord among the servants of Pharaoh, then whoever feared the word of the Lord against the word of the Lord among the servants of Pharaoh hurried his slaves and his livestock into the houses. But whoever did not pay attention to the word of the Lord left his slaves and his livestock in the field. Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand towards heaven, so that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, on man and beast, and every plant of the field in the land of Egypt. Then Moses stretched out his staff toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail and fire rang down on earth, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. There was hail and fire flashing continually in the midst of the hail, very heavy hail. Such had never been seen in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. The hail struck down everything that was in the field in all the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And the hail struck down every plant of the field and broke every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the people of Israel were, was there no hail. Then Pharaoh sent and called Moses and Aaron and said to them, this time I have sinned. The Lord is in the right, and I and my people are in the wrong. Plead with the Lord, for there has been enough of God's thunder and hail. I will let you go, and you shall stay no longer. Moses said to him, as soon as I have gone out of the city, I will stretch out my hands to the Lord. The thunder will cease, and there will be no more hail, so that you may know that the earth is the Lord's. But as for you and your servants, I know that you do not yet fear the Lord God. The flax and the barley were barely struck down, for the flax and the barley were struck down, for the barley was in the ear and the flax was in bud. But the wheat and the emmer were not struck down, for they are late in coming up. So Moses sent out of the city from Pharaoh and stretched out his hands to the Lord, and the thunder and the hail ceased, and the rain no longer poured upon the earth. But when Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunder had ceased, he sinned yet again and hardened his heart, he and his servants. So the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people of Israel go, just as the Lord had spoken through Moses. This frickin' guy.
Wow. And finally, Moses was finally like, okay, I'll stop it after we're outside of the city.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not letting you get away with it this time, man.
Yeah, for real.
Oh, Lord. Hey, at least he finally listened after all these plagues.
Hold on. Did it? What? Hold on. Oh, yeah. Flies. Oh, it took me back to. Hold on.
Are you reading from the study Bible?
The ESV.
No, are you reading like on the computer or are you reading from the Bible?
The computer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I just my monitor is pretty tall, so I'm looking down at my laptop.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. So he let Moses go, but not the people.
Mm.
Yeah. As Pharaoh was saying, plead with the Lord, for there has been enough of God's thunder and hail. I will let you go, and you shall stay no longer. Moses said to him, as soon as I have gone out of the city, I will stretch out my hands to the Lord. The thunder will cease, and there will be no more hail, so that you may know the earth is the Lord's.
Nah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say this next chapter, there's another plague.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Moses literally goes on to be like, yeah, I know you don't fear God yet because the flax and the barley were struck down, but the wheat hadn't come up yet, and they had already planted it, so the wheat was about to come up.
Mm,
So they would still have food.
yeah, that's true. Dang.
Okay.
All right. Chapter 10. I say we leave it here after this chapter.
Yeah, it works for me.
All right. Chapter 10. The eighth plague, locusts. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine among them, and that you may tell in the hearing of your son and of your grandson how I have dealt harshly with the Egyptians, and what signs I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Lord." So Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh and said to him, "Thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your country, and they shall cover the face of the land, so that no one can see the land. And they shall eat what is left to you after the hail, and they shall eat every tree of yours that grows in the field. And they shall fill your houses and the houses of all your servants and of all the Egyptians, as neither your father nor your grandfathers have seen, from the day they came on this earth to this day." Then he turned and went out from Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh's servants said to him, "How long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the man go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not yet understand that Egypt is ruined?" So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, "Go, serve the Lord your God. But which ones are to go?" Moses said, "We will go with our young and our old. We will go with our sons and daughters, and with our flocks and herds, for we must hold a feast to the Lord." But he said to them, "The Lord be with you, if ever I let you and your little ones go. Look, you have some evil purpose in mind. No, go, the men among you, and serve the Lord, for that is what you are asking." And they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence. Then the
Hey,
Lord Then the
maybe.
Lord's yeah, well, maybe the locusts haven't come yet, so
Yeah.
obviously
Yep.
he's just saying right now, no, only you and the men, right? Yeah, no, go, the men among you, and serve the Lord. So
Yeah.
he's saying like only the men, like you're not bringing everybody with you,
Yeah. Yeah. But there's a little bit of inkling coming out there.
right?
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Something's budging.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, so that they may come upon the land of Egypt and eat every plant in the land, all that the hail has left." So Moses stretched out his staff over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind upon the land that day and all that night. When it was morning, the east wind had brought the locusts, and the locusts came up over all the land of Egypt and settled on the whole country of Egypt. Such a dense swarm of locusts as had never been seen before, nor ever will be see or nor ever will be again. They covered the face of the whole land, so that the land was darkened, and they ate all the plants in the land and all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. Not a green thing remained, neither tree nor plant of the field, through all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh hastily called Moses and Aaron and said, "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now therefore forgive my sin, please, only this once, and plead with the Lord your God only to remove this death from me." So he went out from Pharaoh and pleaded with the Lord. And the Lord turned the wind into a very strong west wind, which lifted the locusts and drove them into the Red Sea. Not a single locust was left in all the country of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the people of Israel go.
Like,
Holy crap.
this guy is freaking thick-skulled, man.
Yeah. Well, it does say that the
Hard-headed.
Lord hardened his heart. And I think that it's because the Lord is like, dude, you're in for a whirl because I'm showing you all of these nasty things. I'm destroying your country, and then I'm gonna get my people out of here.
Right. Yep. Yeah. It literally said that God was doing this to show the world God's power.
Yeah,
Yeah. Also,
exactly.
I think Pharaoh is a prime candidate in this case because just as much as it says that God has hardened his heart, it also said Pharaoh has hardened his own heart.
Yeah, that's true.
So he's already hardening his heart, and God's just adding to it. He's
Right.
like, prime candidate.
Yep, exactly. And it just goes to show, like, when you harden your heart against God, that a lot of bad stuff happens in your life, man.
Yep.
The ninth plague, darkness. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, a darkness to be felt." So Moses stretched out his hand toward heaven, and there was a pitch darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days. But all the people of Israel had light where they lived. Then Pharaoh called Moses and said, "Go, serve the Lord. Your little ones may go with you. Only let your flocks and your herds remain behind." But Moses said, "You must also let us have sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Our livestock also must go with us. Not a hoof shall be left behind, for we must take of them to serve the Lord our God. And we do not know with what we must serve the Lord until we arrive there." But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. Then Pharaoh said to him, "Get away from me. Take care never to see my face again, for on the day you see my face, you shall die." Moses said, "As you say, I will not see your face again." Wow.
Oh man, the next one is the final plague threatened.
Final plague.
We got to read it.
Oh, all right.
We
Fine.
got to keep going.
All
The
right. It's
final.
not that.
We got through all of them, and then we're on the final and stop.
Yeah, that's fine. I agree with you. It's also not very long.
Yeah. All right. A final plague threatened. The Lord said to Moses, "Yet one more plague I will bring upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterward, he will let you go from here. When he lets you go, he will drive you away completely. Speak now in the hearing of the people that they ask every man of his neighbor and every woman of her neighbor for silver and gold jewelry." And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. No, sorry, I took away the voice there. And the Lord gave people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. So it's finally changing there. Moses is now looked greatly upon. So now they don't hate him. They're like, okay, this guy's actually working for us. Cool.
Yeah.
So Moses said, "Thus says the Lord, about midnight I will go out in the midst of Egypt, and every firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even in the firstborn of the slave girl who is behind the handmill, and all the firstborns of the cattle. There shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there has never been, nor ever will be again. But not a dog shall growl against any of the people of Israel, either man or beast, that you may know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. And all these your servants shall come down to me and bow down to me, saying, Get out, you and all the people who follow you, and after that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in hot anger. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh will not listen to you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt. Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the people of Israel go out of his land.
Still?
Well, so that was the threat. That God sent
Oh,
the
yeah,
promise.
that's right. That's
It
right.
hasn't
Yeah,
happened.
yeah. Wow.
Do you want to read the next one? Because that's the taking place of it.
Okay. The Passover.
And this is
All right.
where the Jewish belief gets Passover from, the holiday.
Okay.
Mhm.
The Passover. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, This month shall be for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month every man shall take a lamb according to their father's houses, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his nearest neighbor shall take according to the number of persons, according to what each can eat. You shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male, a year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of this month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill their lambs at twilight. Oh, I should have stopped the voice a while ago.
I was running into that too.
Then they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. They shall eat the flesh that night, roasted on the fire with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They shall eat it. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roasted, its head with its legs and its inner parts. And you shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until the morning you shall burn. In this manner you shall eat it, with your belt fastened, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it, and you shall eat it in haste. I don't know why that was so hard for me. It is the Lord's Passover, for I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague will befall you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. This day shall be for you a memorial day, and you shall keep it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations as a statute forever. You shall keep it as a feast. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall remove leaven out of your houses, for if anyone eats what is leavened from the first day until the 7th day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. On the first day you shall hold a holy assembly, and on the 7th day a holy assembly. No work shall be done on those days, but what everyone needs to eat, that alone may be prepared by you. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for on this very day I brought your hosts out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you shall observe this day throughout your generations as a statute forever. In the first month, from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. For 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses. If anyone eats what is leavened, that person will be cut off from the congregation of Israel. Whether he is sojourner or a native of the land, you shall eat nothing leavened. In all your dwelling places you shall eat unleavened bread. Then Moses called all the elders of Israel and said to them, Go and select lambs for yourselves according to your clans, and kill the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop, and dip it into the blood that is in the basin, and touch the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. None of you shall go out of the door of his house until the morning, for the Lord will pass through to strike the Egyptians. And when he sees the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not allow the destroyer to enter your houses to strike you. You shall observe this rite as a statute for you and for your sons forever. And when you come to the land that the Lord will give you, as he promised, you shall keep this service. And when your children say to you, What do you mean by this service? You shall say, It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, for he passed over the houses of all the people of Israel in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians but spared our houses. And the people bowed their heads and worshipped. Then the people of Israel went and did so, as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. So they did. Wow, that was a mouthful. The 10th plague, death of the firstborn. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where someone was not dead. Then he summoned Moses and Aaron by night and said, Up, go out from among my people, both you and the people of Israel, and go, serve the Lord as you have said. Take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone, and bless me also. Finally.
Hey!
Yeah,
The Exodus.
the Exodus. The Egyptians were urgent with the people to send them out of the land in haste, for they said, We shall be dead. Hey, Guru just texted me.
Oh, nice.
For they said, We shall be dead. So the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading bowls being bound up in their cloaks on their shoulders. The people of Israel had also done as Moses told them, for they had asked the Egyptians for silver and gold, jewelry, and for clothing. And the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have what they asked. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. And the people of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, beside women and children. A mixed multitude also went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. The time that the people of Israel lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of 430 years, on that very day, all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. It was a night of watching by the Lord to bring them out of the land of Egypt. So this same night is a night of watching kept to the Lord by all the people of Israel throughout their generations. This is the longest chapter, I
Do you want
think,
me?
in this freaking book.
Yeah. Do you want me to read this? Because you've been
Yeah,
going for
sure.
a while.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Institution of the Passover. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, This is the statute of the Passover. No foreigner shall eat of it, but every slave that is brought for money may eat of it after you have circumcised him. No foreigner or hired worker may eat of it. It shall be eaten in one house. You shall not take any of the flesh outside of the house, and you shall not break any of its bones. All the congregations of Israel shall keep it. If a stranger shall sojourn with you and would keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised. Then he may come near and keep it. He shall be as a native of the land, but no uncircumcised person shall eat of it. There shall be one law for the native and for the stranger who sojourns among you. All the people of Israel did just as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron. And on that very day, the Lord brought the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their host. They made it.
Wow. Yeah. Finally.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild, man.
Dude. Can you imagine if God did something like this today? People's hearts would be just as hardened.
Yeah. Right.
Like there wouldn't be a lot of there would still be people there be no, there's still a logical explanation for all of this,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Which the logical conclusion is that a God exists. You know?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Could you imagine all this crap happening to you? Like,
Uh,
I don't know, man. After like the first plague, I'd be like, all right, just let him, just let him
yeah.
go. It's all right.
Dude, I mean, yeah, the Nile turning to blood, that's not enough for you.
Yeah. Right.
My magicians can turn water into blood, so
Yeah.
shouldn't
So
trust you.
your God ain't shit.
Yeah.
It's basically what he was saying.
Yeah, for real.
That's terrible.
Mm.
And God also hardened his heart, though. I mean, to prove a point here, because God
Yeah.
did say, like, it all has to lead up to that point of like the Egyptians basically giving their valuables away. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
after all that death, they were just like, fine, take it.
Yep. Yep.
It's pretty wild, man. That's a
Yeah.
lot of plagues too. I didn't realize I knew about this story, but I didn't realize there were so many plagues. Like, it's a
Yeah.
lot.
That was a lot, yeah. It must have been a rough, few weeks for them too.
Yeah.
Yeah, to lose your son on top of that too, at that point, Pharaoh's just like, "Take him. Go.
Yep.
Get out of
Yep.
here.
Yeah. Get him out of here.
You killed my baby boy."
Yep.
Yeah. God, man. Whew. I'm glad that, stuff like that doesn't happen today.
Hmm.
Thank goodness we got Jesus.
Right.
Don't have to suffer from God's wrath.
Yeah. No doubt.
Yeah. And I think when I read through this maybe a couple years ago, and I was thinking to myself, like, why don't we still, as Christians, celebrate Passover?
Well, I mean, it does. I was just thinking about that too. And it seems like it was really just for the Israelites, right? I mean,
Yeah, it does say that for generations you shall continue this tradition, though. Yeah, like,
right.
and clearly, yeah, once Jesus came down, he pretty much made a new slate, started it, but he still
Right.
likes when we follow the law and follow God's
Right.
covenants and everything.
Yeah.
And it pretty clearly states, like,
But
you
he
shall do
also
this.
did it. He did this. I think, and the Passover was to like what save the Hebrews, right? To save their firstborns from being killed, right? So
Hmm.
I think since God delivered the Hebrews out of the land of Egypt, he delivered them from slavery. This is something that they have to do to basically thank him for that, right? And pass along in the Hebrew generations because like I don't think I'm Jewish. Like I don't think I have any blood in me that's Jewish
Yeah, I don't
necessarily.
either. Yeah.
I come from more of like a Greek bloodline, which would be Gentiles, right? He didn't deliver Greeks or anybody else from the hand of the Egyptians. He delivered the Hebrews from the hand of the Egyptians. So I think that's why it's not really something that we have to worry about unless you're like going to like a Jewish faith, maybe. or
Good
something
point.
like that, or
Yeah.
come from a Jewish bloodline. That's just kind of my thought on it, though.
Yeah. Well, it is a celebration of what God did for the Jewish people, for God's people,
Right.
and we are adopted into that family as Christians.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, I get it. Like, we don't have to do it anymore. But if it is something that honors God, why shouldn't we?
Right, exactly. Well, and to that point, like I've been doing other stuff to honor God. Like, like during Christmas time, what they light candles, right? The what is it called? I
Oh,
forgot.
Hanukkah.
Yeah, during Hanukkah, they
Hmm.
have those like they're like what, 5 or 7
7,
candles or something like that. Seven
I think.
candles.
Yeah.
Right. That makes sense because of the 7 days. Um,
The
but like
Hanukkah, the event of Hanukkah, though, was for something else. Like the candle burned for like 7 days or something like that.
right,
Is it
right. It's
9?
not for this same instance, but it's still for to glorify God, right? That's kind of the
Uh-huh.
way I see it. So
9
Bailey,
candles.
oh, 9 candles. Okay.
It's
So
called a menorah.
a menorah, that's what it's called.
Hmm.
Oh, it's new to me.
Says 8
Um,
candles representing the 8 nights of Hanukkah, and one additional candle called the shamash, which is used to light other candles.
hmm, interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah. Sorry.
Bailey asked me to get a candle holder, like an old fashioned candle holder. And I actually found one at Goodwill when I was
Mm.
there. So I actually lit that the other day. And, I said a prayer and I was like, Lord, I light this candle to glorify your name. All glory go to you. And I lit the candle. And that's just something that I did to recognize God's glory for us. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's kind of like, that's not a tradition necessarily in Christianity or anything, but just doing these small things to glorify God, I think would help.
Yeah.
You
I
know what I
agree.
mean?
It's interesting that you say that because I've been listening to a few podcasts um, where altars get mentioned quite a bit, and how
Mhm.
like important altars are in the Bible, and just in real, like in current day as well. And that's something that kind of gets passed up because when you used to read through, altars are a place that were built to worship, essentially,
Right.
and that could mean worship God or something else. So that people would build all these altars to things, but you don't really see people being building altars today anymore for God, at least.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
there's churches being built, which is an altar of sorts, but
Mhm.
there's nowhere that people go specifically. There's nowhere that people go specifically to like go worship God. And because the Holy Spirit lives in us, we have become an altar. Like we
Right.
walking as a human are an altar. But
Right.
because that happened, does that mean we just throw away every tradition that God has told us to do in the Old Testament? Even though we're not held to that standard, we can still
Right.
honor him in such ways. And the Christians that were talking about this in the podcast were like, some of them were saying that they had actually built some altars and they'll go to that area to pray,
Mm.
and they'll like make an altar out of their house. And people will say like when they walk in, they can just feel better because it's a house dedicated to God,
Mm.
and it's I've never really thought about it in that sense, but like I do pray over my house whenever I move into a new one. And but like actually dedicating it as an altar is kind of interesting to me because it
Yeah.
is something that was done in the Old Testament all the time.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think to your point, like, Jesus kind of made a new age, right? So,
Mhm.
when Jesus tells us when we pray, it should be in secret to our Father, he doesn't necessarily say you need to go pray at an altar by yourself. You know what I mean? He just says that
Mhm.
we should speak to our Father in secret. So I think, like, exactly to your point, you said, like, since the Holy Spirit is inside of us now, we are like, our bodies are God's temple,
Yep.
right? It's an altar.
We ourselves are an altar. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, I think that's enough just based on what Jesus taught us in the New Testament. But I think that if you can go a step further and glorify God more by doing that, building a specific place for God to reside in your home, I don't think that's a bad idea at all, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, as a modern Christian, we are not held to the standard of the law for anything, but now we throw out all tradition that went along with it in the first place, because we're
right.
not held to that standard. We don't have to live by it that way. But these
Yeah,
things did honor God.
right.
So it's kind of interesting that we don't really do any of that.
Yeah.
you know?
And it's like simple, like you don't have to have all these complicated things like what we read through Genesis, like Abraham and Jacob, like Isaac, they built altars to God just out of stones. Like they didn't
Mhm.
use any fancy, like some people did build like real altars, like buildings for God. Like who is it that I'm thinking of? Oh, I think it was more like David I'm thinking of or something like that. Which wasn't in Genesis, but like he actually built like a tent, like a building for God, but it was as simple as like I'm placing these stones and stacking them and pouring oil over them, and that's my altar to God. Like something so simple, like literally just find rocks laying around and stack them up.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so I think to that point, it's like, we think like, oh, why build an altar? But it's also so simple.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because like a modern trend right now in Christianity is building something called your prayer closet.
Oh.
And people will go in their closet and start praying, and they'll like make essentially their whole closet a prayer place. So they'll like write down prayers, and they'll go in there to pray, and their whole closet has been transformed into this place of worship and prayer to God, because
Hmm.
God does say go and pray in private. So that's been like a trendy thing in the church now for like years,
Hmm.
and ultimately they're creating an altar to God.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like the
Exactly.
idea of it being an altar is kind of dropped in a way, but that's
Right.
exactly what it is.
Well, and I think that like in society nowadays, when we think altar, we think like more of like a demonic thing. When you watch movies and stuff like that, you see like these shrines of
Mhm.
the bad stuff, and you're like, oh, So I think that the word altar has kind of been made bitter
Yeah, well, no,
nowadays.
so those demonic altars that you're talking about are real altars
Yeah, 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 yeah,
because
absolutely.
the demonic power is stronger around those altars
Hmm.
because they're being worshipped. So they have more of a sense of authority in that area because people are giving them the ability to have the authority around them. So those demonic altars are real things, and that's
Yeah,
exactly what it is. It's an altar, but God
right,
also has an altar,
right,
and which is us.
exactly.
So that's why we can go in there and not be touched by them because God has made an altar out of us.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Mhm. So again, though, none of this is necessary as a Christian because we ourselves are an altar. But if
But
we
you
can,
could take it a step further
if you wanted
and
to,
make a place of prayer in your house. Yeah, if you'd like to.
hmm
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
yeah, fascinating, huh?
Yeah.
I was thinking about doing that. I just don't
Yeah.
know where I would
It's
do it
funny
yet.
because I mentioned that to Bailey the other day because when I got that candle thing, she was like, "Oh yeah, I wanted to set up a picture over the mantle above the fireplace and like just have that a nice picture and the candle being lit in that traditional candle tray." And I mentioned to her, I was like, "Well, what if we kind of make it?" I didn't say the word altar, I don't think, but I was like, "Well, why don't we put like a picture of Jesus up on the cross up there or something like that?" And she's like, I don't know if I want that, but which is no big deal. Um, but she was like, "Oh, what we could do," and we kind of compromised on this. She was like, "What we could do is find a painting of like a field of flowers with like a church in the background." And I was like, "Oh, oh," and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's a little bit of a compromise there. I could suffice with that." And then whenever we light the candle, just devote it to God and kind of have that be like a little altar. Nothing super fancy or anything, but
hmm Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think it's a good idea.
yeah,
We don't like again. It's not necessary, but it's
why not?
it's honoring God. in a way
Exactly.
that he likes to be honored. So,
Right. And that's what I've been trying to do more lately too in my prayers is like giving glory to God,
mhm.
like telling God that I, giving glory to him because of who he is. He's
Yeah.
God, you know? So I think that's very important. And especially since when we read through Matthew, we were talking about, the Lord's Prayer, hallowed be your name, that's giving that glory, that holiness to God. So that's one of the reasons I've started kind of implementing that in my prayers a lot lately as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
So good stuff though, man. I'm excited to keep reading through Exodus. We got through a good chunk of it
We did.
today.
We were cruising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a point like getting through that last chapter. I will probably well, I got to reread it anyway because my daily Bible study, but I was just like reading and it wasn't fully processing.
I could tell you were struggling there because at one point before I before I offered to take over, you're like, that was a mouthful. And I almost said, like, do you want me to read from here? But I didn't want to just like interject because you like were just,
I
I
just
gotta
kept
do
going.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not a big deal. It is what it is. But
Mhm.
honestly, I think on the next study, we may want to just reread that chapter just to make sure we grasp everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was talking about that area was talking about the traditions of how to celebrate Passover.
Oh
That's what he
yeah,
was
that's
talking
yeah,
about.
and it
So
was repeated pretty often
it
too.
was repeated. Yeah. So he was like saying
So
like take your best goat or lamb,
yeah,
whatever, and
lamb,
then
either sheep or goat.
yeah, and then cook it in this way. Make sure you're
Right.
eating the unleavened bread. Don't eat the bread that
Which actually I was
rises.
gonna ask, what is unleavened bread?
It's like
Like,
bread without yeast.
oh, bread without yeast.
Yeah, and
Okay.
leavened bread is the bread with the yeast, makes it rise. So it's like flat bread essentially.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. At least that's my understanding. I'm pretty positive that's what it is.
Because when it's either that or you just don't let it rise before you cook it, right? Because, like, that's the
Uh
leavening part? I don't know.
yeah, but mm, yeah, maybe you don't let it rise, but like the yeast is what makes it rise in the first place,
Right.
you know? So let me I'll do a quick Google.
Yeah.
What is unleavened bread made without yeast
Perfect. Alright. Yep.
or
You
other
nailed it right
leavening
on the head.
agent. Yeah. um, yeah. So he's just, but that's that area that you were reading. That's all it was. It was how to honor the traditions of Passover.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. All right. All
Yeah.
right. So
Alright.
how are we supposed to end these videos?
Uh, pretty sure we're supposed to say, like and subscribe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. But like I don't want to do something like cliche, where like it's like oh smash that like button. Like we can't be doing that.
Yeah, no, but when you say it, you gotta actually say it, like, smash that like button. You can't.
It just sounds cheesy though, because like people always say it and they're always doing I'll smash that like button.
Yeah, but it's not. You're saying it wrong though. It's smash that like button.
I am saying it just like you're saying it, Bryce. Smash that like button.
No, you got to use your chest more. You gotta say smash that
Smash that
like
like
button.
button.
No, that's
Because
no,
I sound
no,
exactly like you.
no. You
It's like,
don't.
thank you guys for liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you were interested, please tune back in next week. We are dropping new videos on Mondays and Thursdays. And God bless y'all.
Yeah. Also, don't forget to smash that like button.
Do any of that. Gosh, dang it, man.
God bless. God bless y'all.